good day, Chairmen.
Chairman.
Chairman. As we are, as you can see, if you're listening, just envision it. We are a chairless person today. Chairless. One less person is in this meeting. One less chair is at the table today. Our third, the best, I would say, probably one of the best people is Grant. He's a little bit of a combination of sick and working on a board build here in the States. A monstrous rig. He flew from Canada to somewhere. I can't remember where he said, but he's here in the States working on a board build that he says, he's like, I'm not a board builder. He goes, I definitely don't miss building these. So it was, we wish the best to Grant that he gets it done and programmed and everything is good and he gets back to good health. But today we're going to be talking about kind of a topic. I think we've brushed on this before in the past, but I've had a lot of people recently ask, and in my own playing, which I don't play a lot, but like the times I do, like I'm just gonna bring all the gear. So it's gonna be like load box, power boxes, attenuators. There's a lot of different terms that can be kind of thrown around about like these different terms of these boxes because there's a lot of different options with a lot of different types of names. And it kind of just depends on the application and what it can do and just kind of like the connectivity about it. So I'm really super excited to kind of just dive into and get some better understanding because there are some stuff that can get confusing that people think that it can do, but it can't do, and that you need to do to make, to better enhance it. Because some of these utilized in studios more. So let's dive in with my screen share. If you're driving in your car, just envision some screen sharing.
Some screen sharing of load boxes and IR loaders. Load boxes.
Yeah, boxes.
Maybe we can define for the listener, when we say load boxes, what are we talking about? In IR loaders, what are we talking about? What do you think, Brian? When somebody comes into the Guitar Sanctuary, one of our beautiful sponsors, and they say, Brian, I need a load box.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that means. What do you say to them?
Well, typically I ask them, I was like, what's the application for? Are you using it in your studio? Because there's a lot of these, and I'm just kind of scrolling through them right now so you can see them. There's a lot of different...
Two Notes, Riot, Oxbox, Cab Clone IR from Mesa Boogie, Wazacraft, Tube, Amp Emulator.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. And I think the big one, and we'll screen share in a minute and to really dive in. I think when someone comes into the shop and they said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, I really want a load box, I typically ask them, like, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to play it live? Are they playing it in the studio? Most of the times it's, oh yeah, I'm playing in the studio, but I also want to be able to take that same, or replicate that same sound and take it to my gig, which we all want to do. We never want to practice in our studio or our space or our side of the bed of our bedroom, wherever we have all of our stuff set up, which I did that for years when I lived in a very tiny apartment. All my stuff was lined up against the wall, and that's just how I practice. So but you want to replicate that sound at the volume you want. You don't want to sacrifice tone for lower volumes just so you don't tick off your neighbor or something like that. Except when you own a house. But I think when someone asks, there are some kind of things to go over because there are different units that will do different things. If you're needing it to be silent, and then you need something that has a load that can handle the amp load in it that, doesn't need to push it through a speaker. So there are some different applications. So I don't think it's never something like someone goes, I need a load box, and I immediately go, oh, you need the Oxbox, because that might not be what they need. They might need something that has a USB on the back to be able to hook up and connect and do all these different things. And I think some of these, which we'll dive into, have some extra features in it that some people like. Some people are like, I want cut and dry, really simple. I need a feed to go direct, and I need to do a live amp. So I think there's a difference, and it kind of just depends on what they need to do, really. But I mean, we'll kind of dive into that.
Can I give one quick definition
absolutely,
that I would
absolutely.
give before we dive into some of the options? So usually when I think of somebody says that they're interested in a load box or they don't know what a load box is, essentially what they do is they replace the speaker that would ordinarily be connected to your amplifier, either in a head and cabinet fashion or even in a combo amp. It's really the same thing. It's just that the speaker cabinet is part of the same cabinet that the head is mounted in. So then it becomes a combo cabinet. So in essence, what plugging into a load box does is it allows you to replace your speaker and speaker cabinet. And in some of these new versions that Brian's going to share, they also, on top of not only loading it, they also have impulse responses that are abbreviated by being called IRs. And these essentially are sort of digital profiles of various speaker and cabinets and microphones that have been captured to sort of recreate the essence of different cabinets, so that you can essentially have a rotary dial and scroll between, on many of these, several different amplifier cabinet and speaker cabinet and mic combinations on that cabinet, and even different rooms in some cases that these cabinets are recorded or placed in as the sort of the impulse response is captured, so that you can select between them. You can say, well, today I'm using a deluxe reverb, and so I want to have a Fender cab that's mic'd with a Royer and a 57, and I want to know what it sounds like if this cabinet were sitting in Ocean Way. Or I want to know what it would sound like if it was in Sunset Sound. Some of these have that option where you can actually physically place the cab based on the profiles that these companies have taken in specific famous rooms and studios and things like that. Some of them also offer enriched features like adding effects on top of the existing impulse responses that have already been captured, and you're essentially adding these almost like in post-production like you would in a studio. So again, just to reiterate, the load box is a loading simulation of a speaker cabinet. These are typically what are called reactive loads these days, although in the old days they used to have resistive loads, which were just big resistors that would essentially load the amplifier so that it wouldn't blow up. And then on top of that load, that reactive load that they're creating, they're then allowing you the option to add on top of it a speaker simulation and a microphone simulation and a cabinet simulation that you can manipulate, in a lot of cases, the parameters. So this is great if you want to be able to just take a head, or you have a silent stage and you want to still use your tube amp and have a lot of the glorious sounds of a mic'd amp. Or if you just want to have the ability to have a dozen cabinets at your fingertips to be able to switch in whatever you want. These are all great reasons to have all of that in one box. Yeah. So anyway, sorry, Brian, I want to pass it back to you. And we can get into some of the, that was a very pedestrian, maybe not the the best way to describe it, but I think it gives us at least a starting point of what we mean when we say load boxes.
Yeah.
And I should also say that a lot of these too, you can still run your actual cabinet, like they have like speaker throughs. So a lot of guys, like I noticed, like for example, on recent tours, Steve Stevens with Billy Idol, or Ian Thornley from Big Wreck. I think Ian Thornley is using the Sir ones because he's a Sir artist. Yep. And he's just running all of the Sir reactive load IR for all of his amps. And then Steve Stevens is running all of the 2 notes Captor X's, I think, for all of his amplifiers. But you could also run out to your cabinet and then just have what's feeding the front of house be this like consistent sound, because you don't have to worry about miking and all that stuff. Your engineer gets like a very consistent feed from the reactive load via XLR, or some of them use different types of connections to feed your DAW or feed your interface or feed your mixer. But anyway, just want to also just add that. So I turn it back over to you, Brian.
Thank you.
And let's talk about some of these load boxes.
For sure. Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I think that's a really good and clear. The thing you gotta think about for too is like when someone's coming for like a rig build, if they list all their gear and they say I'm using a load box, I'm using this, that's not typically something that I like need to worry about in the setup. It's not unless you're like trying to do a 4 cable method. That's like there's all sorts of stuff that you have to talk about. But the funny thing about with Ian Thornley, we had Big Rec here end of last year or whatever, and he had that set up just like you described, and it was really cool. It's like there was gear everywhere, and there was racks, and he had his rack with his RJM GT22 he's using, but then he had 3 412s in a room just moving air. And I asked him, like, why are you doing live cabinets if you're doing the direct? He goes, oh, we just like how it feels, like we like that stage, the air moving on the stage. So I thought that was really cool and a smart way of doing a direct signal without having them like the cabinets. But moving
on.
I'll pull that one up later. So the first one, and this was one that was actually recommended by Brian Meter from the Guitar Sanctuary, is the Rock Crusher. Yeah. So I don't, I've never used this unit. It is a very, very popular unit that we have seen sell just throughout. And like the day-to-day, I'm not up front selling, all these boxes typically as recommendations or anything like that. But from what he has said, there's a few that like you just really have to talk about. So it's a really simple unit. There are some that just get really chaotic. Do you have a lot of experience with the Rock Crusher?
Yeah, I actually do. And there's even one that is slightly more advanced than this from Rivera that has like a 10 band EQ on it or something like that. I forget what the distinction is. Maybe we can look it up later, but it's like I think it's like Rivera Rock Crusher. Like if you type that in, then there's one that's like that has even more, like it has a you'll see it, I'm sure. Just type in Rock Crusher or Rivera and I'm sure we'll find it right away. We're looking at it on Brian's computer. Oh, the Rock Crusher recording. I think that's it.
This one? No.
It says Rock Crusher recording. Go down a little further. And then
right here.
Yeah.
My speakers were blocking it.
All good.
Yeah.
All right, so check this out. So it's essentially the same box that you were just looking at, except it has, how many band EQ is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like 11 band. So this is essentially the same thing as the other one that you had just shown. It just has this ability to be able to basically EQ the speaker. Now, this is a fully analog load box and speaker simulation. Most of the other ones that we will talk about today, all of the speaker simulation, mic simulation, that is all done digitally. Yeah. So if you are an analog OG and you're like, I don't want anything touching my signal but pure analog bliss, Paul Rivera, and we've talked about him before on the podcast, is an absolute genius. He's one of the OGs in the game. He's been building pedal boards and he's been building amps and modding amps and repairing amps since the 1960s. Was one of the early guys at Valley Arts before he went on to work for Fender and designed a line of what I would consider to be probably some of the best Fender amps since the original 50s and 60s Fender amps. The cool thing about this thing too is that you can use it as an attenuator. Yes. So not only is it a load box, so it loads your amplifier like a speaker would, but then you have this option to be able to or to select various degrees of attenuation. So you see like a rotary knob on the front that has like, 4 or 5 positions of attenuation. And then you also have this this level control. I think that's just the output. If you go XLR out on the back, I'm pretty sure it's got an XLR out. And then you have all these different EQ options. And I think, as I recall in their manual, they provide you curves to emulate different speakers. So they say, okay, if you want a greenback, you're going to, have a curve in this shape. And if you want more of a Celestian blue, you're going to have more of this shape. And so they give you very specific diagrams to sort of outline the EQ shape so that you're basically modeling the speaker in an analog world, what a lot of the other ones do digitally. And I've had experience with these. I thought they sounded really great. It can also be mounted into a rack if you want to do it that way. And then on the back, it's got an XLR out. So you can just feed that right to your DAW. And again, it's getting 100% analog signal or to your mixer. It also has a line out on it. So if you wanted to run a wet, dry, wet off of this would essentially be like this would come between the speaker cabinet and the amplifier. You could drive a line out. It also is cool that it has a selectable 8 and 16 ohm output. So you can, or the speaker from your speaker cabinet, or from your amplifier into this, you can select either 8 or 16 ohms. Most of them just have a fixed impedance, so you can either just get like an 8 ohm version or a 16 ohm version, or some of them just make an 8 ohm version. You don't have any option to choose. And you can also determine whether you want to add in the EQ or not. So if you just want it to be like, full range, you can decide to do that as well. So really a cool box. I think that these are really awesome. And I think Rivera just makes some of the top of the line stuff that's super underrated in my opinion.
Yeah. I like, this is definitely one of those ones that I need to pull out and try live, because it's like one of those things where you see it used so much and you're like, maybe I should try it.
Yeah. And they also have a mini one that's like small, and I think it's just one. I think it's like a vintage 30 is like what they've profiled, but it's all analog and it's like really tiny. So if you just want like something super small that you could use as like a load box and has that XLR out to feed the front of house, like that could also be a really easy way to go. It's super compact. This is more like a rack space size.
Yeah. I saw the sides. It definitely seems like it's a 3. I think it's like a 3U or whatever they call it, where the amount of spaces it takes. Oh,
yeah, if you take off the feed, it's a 2U rack
It's a
space.
2U? Oh wow, that's even better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's handy. Yeah, no, it's a cool if I can find my mouse. It's such like, it's a cool compact design. There's not a lot of bells and whistles. That's a thing where like when you get into like the Waza and the Ox and sometimes like the Cab Clone IR, like these other boxes we're going to talk about, there's no
USB on this guy.
There's nothing. Like there's like the fact that like me, like I have set up my Oxbox with the preset I want and everything in the mic position, and all that's fun, and I enjoy doing it. I understand from a studio's perspective how convenient that is, and it really is very convenient. But like, I'm not going to bring my big old iPad to where I play and I'm going to set that up and I'm going to adjust. I'm not going to do all that because that's just too much. So where this is it's very cut and dry. I mean, you have the EQ, you have the options, you have just so many really cool options. You can add warm to it. Like there's all these, it's simple. That's the cool thing I like about it. And it's compact.
Yeah. If you're new to load boxes and you kind of want to start to experiment, that's a good one to start with because it's very simple. Again, it's fully analog. It's hard to get into trouble. There's no USB. It's old school.
Yeah. All right. So moving on, we'll do a second one. This one was another recommendation. If I can scoot it over, is going to be the
Fryette.
Yeah. Yes, I know more about this one because the IRs are such a big thing right now. Everyone wants to be able to load in those third parties or those their own take on the thing, and sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes like I've definitely been the culprit of having like Kemper something I Kemper captured or whatever they call it my amp, and it just did not sound good. And I was just like, I should just go for what the professionals that do it are. This seems around the same size. I don't have the specs on it.
Actually,
it might be a little bit taller.
This one's quite a bit smaller, actually.
Even smaller. Wow.
Yeah. So this one is probably about the size of like a Quilter amp.
Wow. Wow.
And this one is really cool. Well, as you can see, if you're watching on the back, it has 3 different impedance selections. So you have like a 2 and 4 ohm. So you could even run a super reverb on this, 8 ohm and 16 ohm. So this is great in that you could use it with any amplifier impedance you want. That's great. The other thing that's really cool about this is that it offers you the things that you would expect in all of them. You have, you have your analog output, which is just like basically everything up to the speaker. You can get your own dedicated output. So you have an analog output, which is just an unbalanced line out, or you can have the IR output. So you can choose either. This is really cool if you want to run a wet, dry, wet rig, is that you can use the unbalanced line out to feed the output or to feed any of the effects. So you could have that just go into any of your wet effects, and then you could use the IR out, with an XLR cable, and that could feed a channel of your mixer. This is also really cool because you have the option for headphones, so that can be really cool. And they also allow you to have a effects loop that has stereo effects for the headphones. So if you wanted to have the sounds of your headphones or all of your delay sounds in your headphones, you could do that, which is kind of cool. That's one thing we talk about, like with the Strymon stuff, like the Iridium. If you put your wet effects after it, you can't hear them in the headphones because it's coming after.
Yep.
So if you wanted to run headphones on this, you could have headphones and you could have the effects coming after it, almost like an effects loop. So that could be a really cool feature as well. If you go back to the front of this thing,
I can find my mouse. There we go.
Yeah, you have like a bunch of different ways to also tweak the actual sound of it. The other thing I think is really cool about this is they put the USB up front. So you have on this thing, I think you have 8 or 12 presets. I forget what exactly you have in terms of the number. They comes preloaded with kind of like Fryette's cabinets that he sort of likes and speakers that he likes, but you can upload your own, which is really cool about this one that some of the other ones don't offer, is you can't go and either create your own IRs or use IRs that you've already purchased and upload them to some versions of load boxes. This one allows you to do that. So you can, use the existing ones that are on there, or you can save the ones that are on there for use later on and then upload the ones that you want. And you can essentially just take the bank preset knob and you can just select between all the different cabinets that you might want. And then you have additional controls over the EQ as well. So if you feel like in a certain context that the IR capture is lacking some mid-range, or these different terms that he uses like edge, bright, flat, low mid, high mid, and then he has a phase inversion. I think the in-out is for the EQ, and then air or bite, I think that's just sort of like adding maybe some more space between maybe the mic and cab type sound. So anyway, these are really cool. Excuse me, I don't have this version. I have an earlier version of this that doesn't have any IRs. It's got everything else, and then you have to add your own IRs, and I've used that effectively. I think it sounds really great. Fryette makes some of the best products that are out there. I think in terms of amplifier products, that their Power Station is one of probably the most innovative attenuators that's ever been made.
Yeah.
I think that they're really, really wonderful. So I highly recommend this one for people that want to get into the IR thing. These are really beautiful units.
I gotta say, the price point on it is insane. $699.
$699.
Like compared to an Oxbox. So like I have an Ox.
Ox is almost double that, right?
Ox is, I think it's it just changed in price. I want to say it's like it changed a couple months ago. I think it's $1,099. It was $999, and it did go up like $100 or $200. I can't remember. It was,
got it.
But like looking at this thing, the fact that what can get confusing, and I was talking to a client yesterday, is that they wanted to run their board stereo, and I was like, okay, great. They're like, but I want to run with my amp and my aux and everything. I'm like, okay, great. They're like, but the aux has 2 stereo outs on the back, so I can just run stereo through the aux. I'm like, well, the amp going in is mono. It can do stereo out with the onboard effects. You can't run a stereo, like you can't run your stereo pedal board into like a single aux. You'd basically need 2 Oxboxes. And they were super kind of confused about it. They're like, man, for that price, you'd think you'd be able to run, a stereo looking at this, significantly cheaper, you have all the presets, the IR loader, all these different impedance options, analog XLR outs, the sheer size of it, and the fact that you have the headphone an 1/8 inch. Oh, it says program input. I'm gonna assume the program input means like an aux input, like you could probably run like your tracks or something into if you're gonna practice. I
don't know. Maybe. Yeah, that makes sense. That you put like an iPad into it or something like that.
Yeah, which would be super cool. And then you have your headphone out and stuff. But for me, the headphone that says headphone effects loop, I would have to dig into this because this is something I'm gonna go dig into after this. Is seeing the fact that it says return left and right and send. So like you could run your board into the back of this to like do an effects loop in stereo. I just don't know. It says analog out 1 and 2. I don't know if that means could you run a stereo?
I think that only affects the headphone.
Okay. Jack. I was gonna say that's insane.
I would suspect though, if you had this set up, you could use like an insert cable out of the headphone out and run that as 2 channels to your mixer potentially, and actually basically be able to add an effects loop to any amplifier. Because Power Load IR allows that option too, where you can put any you can basically take any amp and turn it into an amp with an effects loop.
Golly. And the fact that it's stereo, because then you're only doing your splitter cable into a direct box into the system, and then you have a single amp but running stereo. This is definitely on my list to go open up after this. We don't open up a lot of stuff, but this is definitely when I'm going to go open up.
Yeah, it's very cool.
The price is insane. Before we move on to our third pick, I'm going to throw it over to you, Mason, to talk about the amazing sponsors that make this podcast possible.
Yeah, let's talk about them. So, firstly, as we've all mentioned on many occasions, that Brian loves the Guitar Sanctuary so much, one of our sponsors. He actually just spends all day there, 6 days a week, just hanging out in the back room, building pedal boards, because he just is just so enamored with everything that they do. And they also just happen to be a wonderful store that carries a lot of the items with which we're going to talk about today, whether those are items like the Fryette, Power Load, whether it's items like the Rivera Rock Crusher or any of the derivatives, and many of the other items that we're going to talk about today, including the Oxbox, the Sur Reactive Load, and more. So if you're interested in any of those, definitely check out the Guitar Sanctuary at theguitarsanctuary.com. They not only have all these great load boxes, but pedals by Goodwood Audio and Vertex, among many of the other top boutique brands. They even have the very cool all-new Andy Timmons signature Robert Keeley pedal, which I'm really interested in checking out. Is based on the modified blues driver that Robert Keeley did for many years, famously used by guys like Andy Timmons, John Mayer, and many more, and has basically adapted a version that not only recreates the modded version, but also has special voicing for Andy, so I'm really interested to check that out. And what a better place to buy it from than the store that Andy actually shops at, the Guitar Sanctuary. Right. So anyway, shout out to Guitar Sanctuary for sponsoring the podcast, making it possible every single week for us to continue to put out quality content. Secondly, I want to thank our friends over at the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. Now, Sweetwater's Gear Exchange is run by our friends over at Sweetwater. The coolest thing about the Gear Exchange is that it operates very much like a lot of the third-party sites that you're used to buy and sell used gear. One of the cool differentiators, however, of the Gear Exchange is that if you decide as a seller to put your earnings onto a Sweetwater gift card, you pay 0 fees. You heard that right. You don't pay a dime in fees so long as you keep all of your earnings on a Sweetwater gift card. And this is a wonderful thing if you're somebody like me that's often buying new things from Sweetwater every month. This allows you to keep 100% of your earnings, use it on stuff that you'd be buying anyway, and it's a wonderful service. I think it's like sort of a hybrid model between, I don't know, like a Craigslist, an eBay, and a Reverb. It has lots of great listings, great deals to be had. I love it. I've used it many times and will continue to use it. Set up an account for free over at sweetwater.com/used and check out the Gear Exchange. Get buying, get selling, Sweetwater Gear Exchange. I think you're going to dig it. Lastly, I'd like to talk about Neural DSP. Now, our friends over at Neural not only make one of the hottest new products on the market with the Quad Cortex, but they also have some amazing plugins that they have been selling for years. They've collaborated with artists such as Tosin Abasi, Corey Wong, Pliny. They have very cool models of classic amps, whether it's the Soldano SLO, whether it's the Mark II C+, whether it's the Tone King. And there's a lot more of this stuff that's going to be coming. And they're even going to be starting to allow these plugins that you've maybe already downloaded to be compatible with the Quad Cortex, which I'm really excited to see. But they're offering a special deal for Chairman of the Board's listeners. 30% off. You heard it. 30% off all plugins except for the new releases. And the new releases, after 90 days, they become absorbed into the 30% off. But man, what a great deal. 70% away from free. You can get any of the plugins on the Neural DSP website for 30% off. Go to neuraldsp.com. Use the coupon code Chairmen, CHARMEN, 30% off any of the plugins that you want. Head over there. We are fans of Neural DSP. I love the Quad Cortex. It's a great unit. I've also used the plugins. I've been very happy with it as an alternative to my amazing collection of tube amps. But can't say enough good things about the brand. I'm really excited to see what they do in the future. They are definitely on the cutting edge. And if you just ask Seal, that's all he uses.
That's all he uses.
Uncle Seal, as he's
Uncle
known.
Seal. He's got a couple.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, Brian, let's take it back to load boxes.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for talking about those guys. We definitely, appreciate the heck out of them. And we love all their stuff, and me included, because one of them is my employer. Moving on. So we just got done talking about the Power Load IR. So definitely go check it out. This one is on Sweetwater's website. Actually, no, this is on Fryet's website. Moving on, Fryet. So moving on, we got the Boss Reactive Load Tube Amp Expander. I don't know if that's the full name or if I was just looking at every single word.
Tube Amp Expander, TAE.
And it's definitely, it's got some cool block diagram stuff, which is very interesting. I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, and it's printed right on the top of the unit. And so you can see, exactly how it's wired in relationship to all the other things that it does, because it's got an effects loop in it. It's got, all these different options that you might want to know where the things are located in terms of the signal path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like if you're listening, obviously you can't see this, but we have the Reactive Loud. It has there's a couple different knobs, has some different switches. We got like an effects loop switch, an effects. So there's some built-in effects, a solo EQ, amp control. I see 10 different rig. It's like a 10 dial, like click switch that you can rotator switch. They can switch between 10 different rigs. Onboard EQ, a line out, a headphone, a speaker out, and then the presence. There's two presence knobs, low, mid, high, and high. And there's two of them. Oh, resonance and my eyes. Yeah, presence and resonance. Which is really cool. And I don't know the size of this guy. He looks pretty small.
It's a rack unit size.
It's a rack unit? Wow.
And the block diagram is, that's something that's standard on a lot of the old like Boss rack units, or like the Roland,
Gotcha.
SDE, all these classic ones had these sorts of block diagrams that were printed on the top. It's pretty standard for like rack stuff back in the day.
Yeah. I think what I think is cool is the fact that they printed on the top, and you can see a recommended setting on the Reactive Load for those different types of options: a super combo, a tweed combo, tweed deluxe, a mini combo, a high gain stack. Like they've taken the initiative to that. Sorry, if you're watching bottom left corner of the top of the unit. They've laser engraved all of this like diagram with all these settings, and the same kind of chart that you would see in like a manual that you'd have to, open up and scroll to probably like the 198th page, because the manuals just have everything in it. This tells you if you're running this type of amp or this type of setting, these are the type of cab option, how you should have the resonance and the presence knobs should be, which setting it should be on, which is really cool. I think that just right there allows people to kind of just jump into the thing right away rather than have to go through the manuals, because that's a big thing. Is what's the first thing you do when you have waited for a new piece of gear? Do you open up the box and immediately just pull out the manual and read the manual? We're probably just opening up the unit, plugging it in, going, crap, it's not working. Why isn't it working? Then you look at the manual because you probably plugged something in wrong.
Yeah, this one has, just like the Fryette, it has a 4, 8, and 16 selection for the impedance, and so you can select different impedance amps. It also has the ability to, if you use the effects loop, you can set it to series or parallel. You can change the level to -10 or +4, so you have an option for somewhat close to instrument level. There's really no, some people will say -20 would be more like that, but so you can kind of go between an instrument level and more of a line level. Mm-hmm. You have stereo outputs similarly to how you have the aux that are both XLR. You can even do sort of almost like a wet dry wet, because you have like a mono front of house and then a left and right separately from that, so you could potentially run 3 lines out, and they have ground lifts on those. And then you also have a selection which is a little bit different than any of the other ones, where you have a wattage selection. So you can select for depending on what kind of amp you're using, you can optimize for 10, 50, or 100 watt amps, which is kind of cool.
That's cool. I mean that is the fact that you can select those different options. It's funny, when I started working for an amp company years ago, I always was under the impression more wattage just meant more gain. Like all these heavy metal bands or all these hardcore bands I listen to, they're probably running 150 watt amps because that means more gain, but that's not always true. More watt, it means you can, it can be more headroom or clean it up, which is really cool. The fact that this has that option, because you might, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, if the input level, say you have a 10 watt amp, could you put it on the 100 watt setting to have like...
I think you can. I think it just... I mean, we'd have to look at the manual. I think you could. Yeah. I think it just maybe changes how the power amp maybe simulation might work on it, or some of the other features, but I don't see why you couldn't. But again, there's probably something to consult the manual on. But it does have some cool features. One thing I'll say, maybe I'll save this for sort of a wrap up summation, because I think that there's one important distinction to sort of understand about how these relate to what the speaker curve would look like of a regular, guitar speaker. And where these kind of sit in there, and maybe some of the risks of certain versions of these and using them, long term on your amplifiers, because there are some that I'm not going to say are dangerous for your amplifier, but maybe not ideal in terms of how they might have some impact on the transformer by way of flyback voltages and stuff like that kind of chew away at your transformer slowly. But let's go through more of them. This one's cool too. I have no objections here. You got USB on it too, so you can put it into their editor and mess around with it.
Yeah, MIDI was a cool one too, because that's the one thing that I'm not that I'm skeptical. I haven't, I'm not the type of person that has like, say like I see a lot of people, they're running like the Quad Cortex, or they're running the Iridium or something, but they're changing all their different amps. I'm not all for changing different amps for different gain stage stuff. I know a lot of people who do it, and that's fine. It's every musician has his own thing, but I think that kind of hits the front of house engineer a little bit harder to have to EQ your channel and everything, because if your amp and cab keep changing constantly, he's going to be throwing off his headphones or just scratching his head constantly because it's always changing. So I think the MIDI controller is great for like the onboard effects or whatever there is. I'll find a list of it. You do have the basic foot controls and everything, so that's super cool. Moving on is going to be the UA Oxbox, which we kind of brushed on. From front panel, really simple. You have, 6 rigs. If you're familiar with the UA stuff, very hefty, very durable. There's not a lot of crazy, like there's not a lot of onboard effects. A lot of the stuff you can access through the iPad, which their editor, and you can do it from their desktop, which is super cool. So you can actually go and adjust the mic placement, the type of mic, the room mic level. There are some added EQ and delay and plate reverb, and then it looks like I can't read that from here.
Room mics, master.
Yeah, this one right here. I think it's
oh yeah, I can't see it from in the resolution that it's in right now.
Yeah, I can't read. I think it's a compressor. I can't remember.
Okay.
It's a great unit. It's definitely, it's up there in the price. There are some effects that, this is definitely one of those that has the line out on it too. And what the line out is you're just basically going through the unit to hit your cabinet if you're running, a cabinet. I've done this before too. I've actually went and we had like a house practice somewhere. Weren't running in-ear monitors or anything. Had to have low volume, so I was able to keep the speaker volume low without sacrificing my, pulling back my amp to be super quiet. Like I got my full tone, kept the speaker volume low, and I actually ran the headphone out into just a headphone that I had in my ear, just so I could kind of hear myself without having to bend down or just be sitting on my amp or anything, which is cool. And that's what a lot of these units have, which is super cool. Looking at the backside, and this is one thing that I think was super smart. I just love this type of little thought process, is that they did all of their labeling both directions. So if you're looking at it from the back or you're looking at from it above, you can see all the text. So some of this text is upside down. I don't know why. I'm such a sucker for this kind of stuff. It just makes sense to me that a musician designed it, that, it would have it. It has a USB, which USB for, I think right now is just updating some software, as well as the Wi-Fi chip in there. It has a foot switch. I think you can program it to toggle. There's some of these features I just don't use. Foot switch to toggle. I think it will toggle on the reverb or the delay depending on how you set it. Speaker in and out with variable 4, 8, or 16 ohm impedance, and then you have 1/4 inch line out left and right. So this is where some people think, oh, it's the same thing as these other units. Oh, well, it can do stereo. Well, it's not. It can't do stereo effects from the unit. So I think, for what it does, there's not a lot of options for a bigger price, but it is still a great unit. Do you have a lot of experience with this unit?
I've owned them in the past, and I didn't prefer it to some of the other ones, but I think that if you want a lot of tweakability and you're familiar with the kind of the UA suite of stuff, the ways to manipulate the speakers, the cabinets, the microphones, it'll feel fairly familiar to you if you're kind of used to their if you're used to sort of the way that you can manipulate their software. I think it's very user friendly. I think that the simplicity, the look, the design is all great. I don't think the attenuator is very good to my ear, but I think that primarily most of the people are probably not using it for an attenuator. They're probably using it more for the speaker and cabinet sims and stuff like that. And you have a lot of the benefit of what UA offers, which is sort of great access to a lot of different famous rooms, and you can kind of place speaker cabinets in different rooms, as I had kind of mentioned before, like Ocean Way or Sunset Sound or stuff like that, and kind of get the sound of various cabinets in various famous rooms, and kind of that's pretty exclusive to what UA does. But I don't find this for my ear to be the best option, but I know it's probably the most popular option, or at least one of the most.
Yeah, it's definitely a popular option. We stock a lot of them because we do sell them, but there are like the drawbacks on some of the stuff. Like this looks like it's an XLR out. It's not an XLR out. It's actually the power input. So it's a power. So it's an XLR to a brick that then you connect like a 3-prong IEC, which they have a photo of it. So there is no XLR on it like a lot of these things. But this, I think, for the sake of it, like, this is designed for a studio. This is not designed to, like, for me, like, I take it to my church and I put it on my amp, and I plug in my amplifier, and then I do 1/4-inch outs into a direct box, and that direct box go to XLRs, and like, it's just like a whole cumbersome of things where, like, these line outs were designed to go into like a DAW or something, like, inside a studio, and it's very heavy, and it's a lot bigger than these other ones that we've talked about. It fits up.
This is about the same size as the Waza.
Really? Oh, okay. Size, oh, wow. Okay, so that's a good reference. Yeah, like this one, this takes up the entire inside room of my mono creators backpacks, which we'll talk about mono creators shortly.
Yeah.
And like, it's a great unit. I just think, for some of this stuff, if you want simple, it's fantastic. But there are, as we've already talked about, some other really great low, more affordable, effects loop options. Some, like, this has the headphone out. It doesn't have any kind of 1/8 inch to do any speaker, like any, like, a iPad or like run audio into it, but does have an app which has Mac, Windows, and iPad, which is cool, and they have some new features. This is where I think that it will shine, as where you can, like, if you're using this box and not utilizing, if I can find it, we'll move on. If you're not utilizing this room knob, it's going to sound stale. It's the same thing as on like an Iridium or these other amps. If you don't utilize that room knob, the amp's just going to sound like it's inside a box with 18 blankets laid over. Like, it's just not going to, it's just not going to sound good. I always run the room at like 8, not 19.
Yeah.
Not 19, 18 blankets, 18 and a half if you want. But it's still great. I'm not harping on it because I use it and it's fantastic. But I think, there's definitely, it's a do the research before you buy kind of thing, because there's a lot of, as we've seen, all these other guys, there are some really fantastic units out there.
Absolutely.
Moving on, this is a newer product. It's the Cab Clone IR Plus. There's been a couple versions, obviously, of the Cab Clone, which, because this is IR Plus, this is the newest one. And the cool thing about this guy is that it's like pedalboard. It's like a pedal size type of unit. It's, it's obviously
a big pedal, but
big pedal. It's not, it's basically like if an Iridium was on steroids, and it's just like, it's chunky, but it's manageable. It could fit inside your backpack if I can rotate it. Yeah, like, it can fit inside your backpack. It can fit, there's no foot switches, obviously. They're all knobs. But there's just, a lot of really cool options. A USB. That's the cool thing about some of these, is that if you're into doing USB, like loading your own IR stuff, it's a really handy tool to have. But yeah.
And I think that they partnered with 2 Notes to develop their the captures of all their impulse responses. So like on one side, there's like a decal, kind of similar to what Boss showed. Yeah, where it gives you all the options. So it has like 2 banks of 8 presets. And bank A is all those cabinets with a dynamic and a ribbon. And then bank B is all those with a condenser and a ribbon. So it's like the 412 dual rectifier, traditional, standard, horizontal, a 112 rectifier cab, Lone Star, California Tweed, etc. And so you can kind of scroll through those, and then you can override any of those presets with the USB and put in whatever thing that you want.
Yeah.
And again, I think that those were captured. Those are captures that they collaborated with 2 Notes on. So just keep that in mind, that they're very reputable company that specializes in this sort of thing. And then you just have some basic attenuation on it, where you can go up to minus 16 dB. You have, again, the cabinet selection in an input and output level of presence, and then you can determine whether you want to hook it up to a speaker just like some of the other ones, and you want to send this to front of the house, or you want it to act as a load.
I don't see the ohms. Did I miss an ohm?
Yeah, so the impedance wise, it's well, you have to buy it in the impedance that you want. So it doesn't have a selection.
Oh, okay.
So you know, on the back of it, it has like whatever the, you know, like a little dot, as you can see like on this one. It has like a 416 or 4, 8, and 16, and then they put like a dot or a check mark on which one it is. So when you buy this, you have to specify the impedance. So it's not like some of the other ones where you have that selection where you can go between whatever you want.
Yeah, well, I think that's fine too. I mean, there's, you know, if you're running a couple different amps, you know, some of those amps might have the same, you know, ohms, which that's convenient. I could understand if MIDI. You had the MIDI is really cool. That's very cool, especially because you can, and the phase and headphone out, line out. So there's a lot of cool options for this guy, line in and everything. Moving on, we have the Reactive Load IR, and actually this is one that you had recommended that we talk about. So would you like to chat about it first, or do you want me to go ahead?
Well, I would love to chat about this, but before we do, I want to turn it over to you, Brian, for a couple more of our sponsors that make the podcast possible every single week.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, so as we talk about, we love our sponsors, and we love these companies that are our sponsors. They're not just sponsors just because they're, you know, they want us to talk about their gear. We truly love these companies, and we use so many of them so often. And the first one, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, is Mono Creators, with a discount code for 10% off with the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN. Had to read it to make sure. I don't want you to try to type in.
Is that a Mono Creators bag right behind you there, Brian?
This is not. This is a camera bag, because I have it needs to be. I need to get one for my. I have a Mono Creators bag somewhere around here. I got one up there. I got two. I'm everywhere. I got double cases. So their code is Chairmen for 10% off all their stuff, boards, cases. I think I have 6 or 7 other things just because there's such good durable quality when it comes to this kind of stuff. Is there double
standard
guitars? It really is. It's just like the Tesla of guitar carrying bags. And there's been so many types of cases out there. Like if you're gonna get a soft case or like a bag case or whatever people call it, mono is the way to go. There's only one way to go, mono. And that's and then our next sponsor is, well, definitely I would say is one of the best in the biz. Is Bestronix. I'm just with all the dad jokes today, which is okay. But if you ever had to order parts or cables or looms or fly racks, or you've seen some of your favorite bands, like a lot of my favorite bands, use Bestronix with Brad for all of their rack needs and the quad cortex setups, and they truly are the best to just supply you everything. Brad is always ready to respond to an email, take a phone call, or send over square plugs or any cabling we need. And he's they're the best. I'm just gonna say it.
That's why they're the best in the tronics.
Just best in the tronics. And so they have a discount code also for 10% off called DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, for 10% off. Hit them up. And our final, stick with me. Our final is another amazing. There's some pretty cool creations of stuff. Is Creation Music Company out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. John Snyder and his family are incredible. It is not a normal day if I do not get at least 18,000 packages from Creation Music Company a day, with all of their amazing square plugs and anchors and zip ties and flatboards and bridges and everything I get from them, because they got cool stuff. So reach out to them using the code Chairmen15, CHARRMEN15 for 15% off all of their products except some custom stuff. Those are excluded, but hit them up. And I'm going to throw it back. Now we have a third chairman. Or we say third or half, 0.5.
Yeah. Oakley has just joined us, and Oakley would actually like to talk about one more sponsor that makes the podcast possible, which is our friends over at Stringjoy.
Yes.
I've been using Stringjoy for the last several months. I've been incredibly impressed with the quality and the longevity, frankly, that I just have a difficult time getting out of uncoated strings. Normally, I'm more of a coated string guy because I just destroy strings so quickly. These seem to last longer than any uncoated string that I've ever tried. And they even offer coated strings. I just haven't tried those yet, although I'm anxious to check them out. And if you want to check out Stringjoy and see what all the buzz is about, see if I am giving a true and honest endorsement of a quality string, you can check them out and get 10% off over at stringjoy.com by using the coupon code BOARDS, BOARDS. Get 10% off at Stringjoy. Not only do they offer all their strings a la carte where you can just buy them one at a time, they also offer subscription services if you want to have strings delivered to your door every single month. Check them out, stringjoy.com. Use the coupon code BOARDS for 10% off. Now let's talk about the Reactive Load IR.
Yeah, I think this is a good final product to kind of talk about, and we'll wrap up. Just our
we
thoughts.
also have the two notes.
Oh yeah, sorry, my little screen bubble. Yeah, two more, two notes, two more.
All right,
so two more. I think these are the two best to kind of end on. Thank you for helping. I definitely did not see that said two notes. I have the little screen bubble that was blocking it.
All good. All good.
So yeah, I think the Reactive Load it's a very small unit, and I think
this one is probably one of the smaller ones that's out there,
which is fantastic. It has a headphone in and headphone out, aux in, headphone level. An IR selectable. You can see how many it has his bank and cab. Like it's really thought out really well. The signal with plus dB. The high cut. There's a lot of really cool simple options. There's not a lot of bells and whistles. You have your input and through in your unfiltered and your IR balanced outs. There's no XLR. There is a USB for you to mess with the IRs. The capability, but it's really simple. I think that's the cool thing about it is it's really simple, really compact, but it seems like it just really has a lot of cool options. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this one for me tone wise is my favorite of all the IR loaders. I feel like Sir has done a really good job at identifying sort of like the most typical cabinets that somebody would want in terms of like 412 cabinets, 212 cabinets, open back, close back. They do a really, really wonderful job. I think it's very easy to use. You can also upload your own IRs if you want to. You have that rotary switch for the IR select. And so the only cabinet that I felt like I was missing on this one that I wanted was more of a Voxy cabinet. And they don't really make a Voxy amp. And so understandably, they don't have that in their arsenal. But like everything from like kind of Marshall to Fender to maybe more modern stuff, kind of more boogie-ish, you can definitely capture all that stuff with various types of speakers, whether that's a Celestion Greenback, V30, G1265. They cover the gamut of all that stuff. I think that it's a simple one. It sounds great. The IRs out of the box are great. I really dig this one a lot. I would say that if I had to pick two, I would say this and the Fryette are my two favorite, although I prefer the impulse responses on this to the stock Fryette ones, but that's kind of just more of a personal choice. You could frankly just take the ones out of this because you can extract them and put them into the Fryette if you want. Yeah, I really love this unit. This is tone wise, I think it's one of the best ones.
Yeah, I like for a lot of musicians, I mean, especially for me, I'm all about the less amount of stuff I need to bring. I don't want to have to, like we were talking about it earlier, like using some direct amp cab pedals are great and they're really convenient, but they don't like give you that liveliness of having an amp and stuff. So if you're going to bring an amp, having something like this that can, if you have an open back combo, you can literally throw it in the back of the combo with your cabling, and you don't need to have all these extra. Like me, I literally have to carry my aux inside of a full adult backpack. Like it's just a lot to set up the play, you know, for a couple hours. If you know, if you're gigging constantly and you're on tours and stuff, using big bulky stuff, if that sounds great. But this is really cool for just how small it is. The fact that out of the box, the cabinets and stuff you're saying are fantastic. Are they what 112s, 212s, 412s? Like
so it's a range of 412, 212, and 112 in various speaker types, in various microphone combinations. And so they're really just out of the box. It's just everything that you'd want. And the microphones are pretty standard. It's like a, you know, Royer and a 57, you know, and so I think that they all sound really pretty fantastic. So I would say if I'm going to use one, it's probably going to be either the Sur or the Fryette.
That's cool. And the price, $599, is absolutely insane. And like, I mean,
and the load on this is the closest. This and the Fryette load wise most closely resembles what you would find in an actual speaker. And there are some risks, as I had mentioned before, when you're using some of these load boxes. They can really stress out your amplifier and have a negative impact over time on the transformer,
for sure,
by way of these things called flyback voltages. And they tend to deteriorate the transformer the longer that they're in use, and kind of the hotter that you run the amplifier, the more that it expedites sort of the damage. And some of these, frankly, I don't think are 100% safe to use long-term with an amplifier without risking damage. The only ones that I can say 100% that I could stand behind and say you could use this forever and it'll be totally fine is the Sur and the Fryette.
Wow, that's awesome.
And you can look at their speaker types here that Brian's highlighting. There. It's got vintage 30 into a Badger 112 cabinet, which is kind of more, you know, Marshall-y, you know, esque. A Bella 112, which is more Fender type. That's a V type. A Pete Thorne 212, which is Celestion Creamback. A Hedgehog, which is kind of based their Dumble style, Celestion G1265, and then it has Sur 412 with greenbacks, and then Sur 412 with vintage series, and those are kind of more traditional Marshall. As I said, the only one that I feel like you don't get that I wish we had is more of a Voxy one. And in mine, I just had downloaded some Ownhammer Alnico Blue kind of Vox AC30 ones, and I put it in there for the I think I put it in there for maybe the Badger 112 and in the V type. And so, because I didn't really use those, and I've kind of got everything I need if I'm ever going to use a load box right there. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, this is definitely, I will say, after like us having this, like I said, I've been on the UA, I've been using UA for a couple of years, and it's been great. But seeing some of these other units, like especially this one, because was this the one that you mentioned that Big Rec Ian Thornley, was it Ian Thornley?
This is what Ian Thornley was using. Yeah, and this is only available in 8 ohms, so just keep that in mind. If you needed the variable impedance, I would go with the Fryette, because that has all those options.
Yeah,
and then there's one more, which is the 2 notes.
Yeah,
this one also, this is probably actually the smallest, because this is like a pedal size, but it also has the most abbreviated features. You cannot use it with, it's like the Sur in that you have to, or the Mesa Boogie, where you have to get dedicated impedance. Like if you want a 4, an 8, or 16, you have to get it for that. It does have stereo outputs, so that you're able to sort of run it like a left and right channel, although it's not actually stereo. But their editor suite, I would say, similar to UA, is very, very like high end and nice.
Awesome. Yeah, this is definitely one that I've seen sell a lot. I'm a huge fan. They're reasonable. I don't even know what the price is on it. Let me find it real quick. $5.99 as well. Yeah. So I mean, I love the guys at two notes. They make such incredible good
Mr. Notes
gear. Yeah, Mr. Notes.
John J. Notes.
John J.
Yeah. Founder of 2 Notes.
It's just like it's very, as you can tell, it's just like the last unit. It's definitely something that this if I'm it looks small enough that you could throw it in the back of a combo. You could throw it in the backpack. It's nice and compact, but it still allows you to have those options of your headphones. You know, definitely,
six
you know,
presets.
gives you 6 presets, and I don't think is there a loader on it? Yeah, USB.
Yeah. So it's got a load.
Yeah,
and it's got a load. And I think the thing that is great about this one again is like their software and two notes. Though I think the wall of sound is what it's called. I would say that it is as good or better than what UA has as far as their manipulation of speaker cab and all that stuff.
Yeah,
I use the Cab M on occasion as basically sort of like a glorified IR loader for some of the load boxes that I have that don't have any impulse responses.
Okay.
And it's a really nice thing to have where you can call up all different sorts of cabinets, microphone combinations. It has a similar thing where you can put it into different rooms, you know, like the Ocean Way thing.
Yeah.
Or the Sunset Sound. And the mic combinations, the locker of mics that you can choose from are pretty great. So I think... Yeah,
I can see.
He's a big fan of the Ocean Way tones. Yeah. So anyway, there's lots of different options. And you can, you know, again, set it up on your iPad. You can set it up on your iPhone. There's some photos, it looks like, of it there. I think that this is also a really great unit as far as that's concerned. I haven't gone deep into how they're achieving the load.
Yeah.
Right, Oakley? No, we don't know how they're achieving the load. So I can't really speak to the technology on that, but I do know that it is really easy to use, and I think that they also have come up with a very simplified system for a very compact unit. So I you know, although my preference is the Fryette and the Sir, this also seems like a good contender. I know that they've spent a lot of time capturing lots of different amplifiers and cabinets to really create a very replete library of cab and mic options and room options. So I know you can get some great sounds. I've seen guys get some amazing tones out of these.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think like some of and there's so many more. These are just some of the ones that we touched on because we just don't have enough time to talk through all of them. But there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of companies that have stuff. So I would say to kind of, you know, our final thoughts, sum it up and everything. A lot of this has to just with like, it's kind of the thing I always go back to is just do your research. Kind of get, you know, if you have a local guitar shop that has some of these, go there, see if you can bring your amp, you know, or test an amp that's there and hear how it sounds, see how it feels to you. A big thing about this stuff, and a lot of people comment on, is that it just didn't feel this way. It just didn't feel like this for me. It wasn't and a lot of this stuff is like, you get inspired to play stuff by how things feel, and if it just feels dull and it feels bland, it's just boring, and then you just never want to use it. So I would say most of
these places have good return policies where you can check it out with your own gear, or go to the Guitar Sanctuary, take your laptop with you, and you can record a little something with each of them to see like which one are you responding to.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we encourage it. I mean, if you know, if it's something that you want, you know, it's the sound that you want and you need something that's more convenient, take the time and figure it out. Don't rush into it, because then you might hate it and then you might not be able to return it. And then it just becomes such a pain that if you have the opportunity to try it out and just, you know, do your research, talk to some friends, you know, watching videos of that kind of stuff is not always going to be justifiable to your tone and your ears and everything. So just do the research. Any final thoughts for you, Mason?
Yeah, I think, again, if you want my recommendation, I think the ones that I like the best, and I've tried them all except for I haven't tried the load part on the two notes, but I've tried all the IR stuff. My two favorite are the Sir. I think sounds amazing. I think the Fryette sounds amazing. I think you may need to supplement with your own impulse responses. Own Hammer is a great resource for that, where you can get, you know, some amazing impulse responses. Pete Doran has some really cool demos on some of his stuff, so you can kind of get a sense of what the Own Hammer stuff is. But Oakley is very passionate about this, as you can hear.
It sounds like it.
He's big into impulse responses, I will say. You know, but since he was born in 2022, what can we expect? You know, he may be a digital guy, so I'll have to tackle that as a parent. Who knows? But I would say if you want to go and get the two best, I think, Fryette and Sir, I think are my two favorite. if I'm going to go that direction. I really like those.
Yeah, and we'll I think we'll go ahead and try to link maybe some of those Own hammer. Is it Own hammer?
Yeah, Own OWN. Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, we'll put those in the description so you can check them out, and we'll put links to all these as well that we talked about today, so you can check them out on your own.
Awesome. Well, you guys have a wonderful weekend. If you're listening, drive safe. If you're watching,
you're commuting.
If you're commuting, have a good commute, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right, take it easy.
See ya.